Yes, and interesting piece there. And talking about garbage, well, joining me in the studio now is Leah Oyake, who is the Chief Officer for Environment. Thank you for joining us this morning, ma'am. And of course, an interesting piece there talking about garbage. And I remember last week and a half or so ago, Nairobians were up in arms against the governor, saying that he has failed Nairobi mainly because of waste management. Now, is this something that can be managed over time? I mean, it's been perennial for many years. We've seen Nairobi with a lot of garbage, which, of course, residents have felt is totally unnecessary.
Thank you, Michael. I want to start by saying that the responsibility for waste management is for everyone. It's really not the whole or sole responsibility of a county government. Why do I say this? I say this because if you just saw what we have seen from the clip is that waste must be separated from the source. And if we have to do separation at source, then the generators of the waste must appreciate what are really these elements that requires that we separate waste at source so that we can channel the different streams of waste to different commodity chains for purposes of economic gains for individuals and for ensuring that we reduce that volume of waste that becomes a nuisance either at our public disposal sites or in other equally an awkward place that we most of the time see in Nairobi. So I look at it that the institutions have got responsibility for waste management, the generators themselves, the industry, the private sector, and of course the media houses. For example, if the media houses could come and of course share some of the benefits of the different streams of waste, then people would take advantage of the different waste streams and therefore they will not just dump it the way they are now doing it. So I would look at it that, yes, we need to take a different front towards waste management, that it is a responsibility for everyone. And we need to identify what is this responsibility that we need to take. Okay, for a long time, the county government has taken the sole responsibility of generating the regulations that govern waste management or the players in waste management. Equally, the county government has taken the responsibility of the general collection, transportation, and disposal. That you look at it that, yes, I generate waste, but I need to have some responsibility. I need to know who is the transporter. Do I pay for what the transporter requires? And indeed, if the transporter requires to be paid, where is this waste disposed? Do I take that responsibility to even demand from whoever is my agent for collection that, yes, you took my waste, where did you dispose it? Did you take it to another neighborhood so that it becomes a nuisance to other people, or you took it to the designated disposal site, which in our case in Nairobi, we only have Dandora disposal site for disposal of waste.
We'll come to the actual disposal sites and possibly the effect that it also has on the environment. But going back to your suggestion that, of course, responsibility begins with all of us in garbage separation. But they say information is power. Has the county government done enough, first of all, to inform residents that you can actually separate them and then provide them with an avenue to do that? For instance, there are countries where you'll have garbage collection bags that are colored. You'll have maybe black for maybe things that are recyclable. You'll have maybe white for tins and so on and so forth. But we've not seen that initiative from the county government so that those who want to even separate don't have an avenue or a way to do it.
Thank you, Michael. I think if you look at the CBD, we started by introducing waste separation at the CBD. If you walk around CBD, most of the streets are installed with litter bins, 3 color-coded litter bins. That is green, blue, and brown. So that you take your recyclable, that is categorized as paper and plastic, into the blue bin. Then the green bin would then carry the biodegradable, that is the food waste and any other organic waste that probably you can solicit from the streets, like the green cuttings from our beautification and the rest. Then the brown bag would, or rather the brown bin would take care of that waste which eventually has to be taken to Dandora. This was started on a pilot basis about 2 years ago as a move towards the implementation of integrated solid waste management system. The county government has got an integrated solid waste management system that promotes efficient waste collection, efficient waste separation from the source, recycling of waste or reuse of the waste, safe disposal and treatment of waste that can be treated. But this plan is so, I would call it, it is so fundamental and would require a lot of resources to be implemented. So the best thing that the county government saw was desirable then was to start separation on a pilot basis. And we started with the CBD. The next stage we are going to go to, if you remember my call, is that Nairobi has been divided into 9 operational zones. We call them zoning for purposes of franchising. Because when we did the master plan, which we are regarding as the integrated solid waste management study, through the assistance of the Japanese government, we found out that Nairobi could be franchised into 9 operational zones for purposes of efficient collection and transportation. And the private sector was and still ripe to take care of the waste collection and transportation so that the private sector can get into the element of waste collection and transportation as a player. So we started this by taking what we call Zone 7. Zone 7 comprises of Kileleshwa, Kilimani, Lavington, and Kangemi. The concept of franchise requires that you have a cross-subsidy for those who can pay and those who cannot pay. So if you look at Kangemi, the willingness or the affordability to pay for waste collection services is a bit low compared to the other pockets of Lavington, Kilimani, and the rest. And therefore, we said this is the best unit that we can start to pilot on the franchise. When we took out this and we actually advertised, we got a private sector who could undertake this collection and transportation, and further inculcate the element of waste separation from source by adopting the 3 color-coded bags or 3 color-coded bins. And Michael, I want to tell you that the private sector who are part of the stakeholders for efficient or sustainable waste management system took us to court. So we are still in court trying to get out of this system so that we can roll out a citywide efficient waste collection system that can internalize waste separation at source. So that is where we are. We haven't given up, Michael. We are still moving on. We went ahead and actually developed a bill which has now become a Solid Waste Management Act to embed the elements that are for sustainable waste management. That is separation at source, dividing Nairobi into different units so that you give to individual private waste collection for purposes of accountability and transparency, and of course to categorize waste. We found that in that bill, in that act, if you look, we have different 6 streams of waste: the biodegradable waste, the household waste, the market waste, the biomedical waste, the electronic waste, because electronic waste stream is also now becoming a nuisance to the environment. And therefore, we were coming up with the different management systems for these different waste streams so that those who see this economic opportunity on different waste streams can now take advantage and invest in this. And the county government was going to promote this type of investment by identifying collection points where we could gather different waste streams for purposes of the industries to take advantage of those different wastes.
All right. Okay. In case you're joining us now, with me in the studio is Leah Oyake, who's the Chief Officer for Environment, Nairobi County. And we're talking about garbage disposal, garbage collection, and how we can deal with this perennial issue of garbage in the city, and not just in the city, but in the country. We're going to take a short break, but we'll be right back, and we'll continue with this discussion. And remember, you can communicate, also you can participate in the conversation, and the Twitter handle to do that is at KTN News. So do stay with us right here on KTN News. We'll be right back. Joining us now also is John Kioli, who's the Executive Director for Green Africa Foundation. Thank you for joining us.
You're welcome.
Before the break, we had just started the discussion on garbage collection and creating awareness of the adverse effect that it has on the environment. And maybe I'd like to bring you in, John Kioli, on the idea or the question of having this not just in the urban areas, but also are we getting this information to the rural areas? Because I'm sure the urban areas probably bear the brunt of having the garbage, but also we have garbage coming up in rural areas.
Thank you very much. I think we need to realize in the Vision 2030, especially in the midterm too, we have, or Kenya has suggested that we should have 9 areas where in the arid and semi-arid areas or in the rural areas whereby they can have landfills. The reason is Kenya contributes about 70 metric tons of carbon dioxide in terms of emissions every year. and we need to look for ways of abating that. Landfills have, a possibility of abating about 1.1 metric tons every year. And that's significant because as a country, we need to bring down our emissions. In landfills, we are looking at positioning ourselves in terms of tapping methane gas, in terms of biogas. In the rural areas, most of the generated, waste material is organic. Organic, you can generate it in terms of digesting it so that you can have biogas, and the rest can go into organic fertilizer. There is a huge opportunity. But the biggest also challenge is paper bags, plastic bags. And you'll go to any town in Kenya, and you'll have that's the biggest menace. I would suggest a very radical way, and this is a challenge to the counties, that why can't you have a law? In the UK, you are not given paper bags, plastic bags in the supermarket.
In the supermarket. Mm-hmm.
You come with your own bag. And if you actually want to carry paper bags, if you insist, then you have to buy. I think we need to reduce from the production point. The supermarkets have the biggest share of this challenge. And you ask yourself, why are they giving you these plastic bags? They are advertising their companies. They're advertising.
It's a marketing strategy in a way.
So my position is, can we first of all say there's no advertisement on these paper bags so that that motivation can be removed? Second thing is to see if we can have people or a certain rule or a certain policy coming into effect that you have to go with your kiondo. You remember Kenya generates so many kiondos, baskets that they can carry bags. And it used to be a very good thing in the 80s to go with your bag to the supermarket,
so that you
carry
don't
your
have to
things.
use what they have to give
Yeah,
you.
but that has gone. All these paper bags, you collect them, you dump them, and they end up filling, the drainage systems. And I thank the county of Nairobi, they have done a lot. But until we cut from the generation, then we still have that problem.
Okay, let me bring Leah in and ask you, as a member of, well, as the chief officer for environment in the county, why not come up with stringent laws that actually make sure we maintain the environment? I can quote even possibly our neighboring country, Rwanda. They completely did away with paper bags, and we can see a definite change even in the environment and cleanliness.
Thank you, Mike. I want to look at it totally differently. In Kenya, when I look at really who are employed within the waste management sector, both the direct and indirect, which of course Green Africa is part of the industries which have contributed to major employment in the recycling industry. I'm one person who probably may not advocate for instant laws that would stop probably reuse of waste, especially the plastics. Why am I saying this? I'm saying this because there are existing technologies that can manage waste. Whichever stream of waste that is generated, the technology is there. So what we need to do is to look at what is it that the country, Kenya, and most of the county government, where the urban counties, where much of the waste is generated, what are these technologies that we can employ so that what we legislate on as not being taken to the environment is that waste which we cannot get technology to manage. I want to say that if you take, for example, recycling of plastic, there's so much of plastic waste that is recycled. The only problem is that we have a problem with low-density polyethylene, the flying bags, which we usually use for containment of waste. But even that also, we can have technologies that do refuse-derived fuels from it, mix that polythene bag as waste with some of the sawdust or any other waste material, and then we'll get some source of energy in the form of refuse-derived fuel or the big briquettes which are being used in Kenya at the moment. So I'm one person who will advocate for more recycling as opposed to regulations that will promote recycling of waste other than stopping different waste streams to come to the environment. So we need to relook at really what is our economic front as a county government. What is it that we can employ to make us manage our waste well. And whom are we employing? The waste management sector has got a very big social responsibility, in my view. It employs from the picker up to the industry. And when we look at that chain of employment from the waste management industry, then I would advocate for more of recycling technologies than legislations that would stop it. Just to contribute on what you said about really what are we doing to the rural areas other than focusing on the urban centers. The urban centers are the major generators of waste, because when you look at it, there are so many people who converge at urban centers. When you go to rural areas, people live on very big pieces of land, and as my brother had said, that much of the waste is organic, so you can easily return that waste to the natural environment, which of course will not cause a lot of problems. What is now streaming to the rural areas is the plastic. So what we need to look into is the network that can gather all this plastic that is streaming into other urban, non-urban counties, to bring them to the centers where recycling is happening. I do remember when I was doing my research, I did my PhD on recycling of waste in urban centers of Kenya, focusing on Nairobi, Mombasa, Kisumu, and Mombasa, Kisumu, Nakuru, and Nairobi. And Green Africa is one of the case studies that I did evaluate their impact, both in terms of environmental contribution and economic contribution. And I found out that, yes, they have very elaborate network of collection of the plastic waste that they need to collect. So what we need to look into, what is the logistical support that we can give some of the industries that are coming up? What are the incentives in terms of transportation? Because they are just like any other players. We don't consider them as removing a lot of burden from the environment. So for me, I look at it that we need to look at some of the innovators within the waste management sector, and what is it that we are giving them as incentives. As he rightly said, that when you go to most of the European countries, you don't go to the supermarket and get a plastic bag for packaging for free. It is either 15 euros or 20 euros. That is probably what we need to look into as far as management of the environment is concerned.
All right. Let me come to you, John. And what do you think is the biggest impediment in the residents really just taking up this recycling issue as a serious issue when we look at the impact that it has on the environment? Is it a lack of knowledge? Is it that we don't care? Is it that the rules that are there are not stringent enough to force us to actually take care of our environment?
Regulation of solid waste material has so many policies. When you look at MCA 1999, it came up with all the issues that are dealing with solid waste. UNEP generated a report that is supposed to show how we should deal with waste. 2006, NEMA came with specific regulations for issues of waste management. Our own constitution, which we promulgated in 2010, came up with Article 42 in the Bill of Rights that Kenyans need to have a clean environment. We have come up with a policy in the county, an act in the county, which is again emphasizing on the issues of solid waste. My question is, all these regulations, are they effected? And I think that's where the problem is. We have so many legislative instruments that we can use to control waste, but the effect is they're not being put into place. And that challenge will continue so long as the willingness, the political willingness to face issues of waste material is not effected. One of the issues, I think, is to bring the issues of motivation towards waste management, and to turn this challenge into an opportunity, because other countries are actually using waste as a source of employment. If we continue coming up with good incentives, there are about 36,000 employment slots for this country that we can generate from waste material. How is the private sector looking at this kind of sector? Can they come up with efficient systems that can be able to push issues of collection of garbage So my case is, I think we need to enforce what we already have to be having impact.
Okay.
And incentivize the whole issue of garbage collection, so that the private sector are seeing bankable projects, the renewable energy is seeing an opportunity, and there is also opportunity for generation of power, cheaper power, renewable power. There's an opportunity of improvement of health sector. There's an opportunity of looking at the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, and we have 6, we have 12, we have 11. All these are issues of climate change or issues of renewable energy, issues of clean air, clean water, and are all inside what we call garbage. So we have not looked at it as an opportunity.
Okay. Leah, is there an elaborate plan by the county government in terms of waste disposal? Because if we look at the current way it's done, Dandora currently is full as the only one that we have. We know that they had identified Roy, which again faced a problem because apparently it was on the air path, and as a result, of course, it had issues. Is there a plan? Because it looks like, okay, we filled Dandora. Oh, let's look for somewhere else and finally look for a place. Is there a plan in place as to where to dispose this garbage?
Michael, Nairobi County actually identified the need for an alternative disposal site several years ago. As I told you that we have an integrated waste management plan that calls for the closure of Dandora and opening of a new sanitary landfill site. And as you've rightly said, the site that was identified during the study period is Ruai. And this underwent a lot of environmental considerations. It was not just picked from the blues. And therefore, the county government is still fast-tracking the relocation of Dandora to Ruai site. What I find is people not getting right is that when you talk of integrated waste management and sanitary landfill site, many people do not understand. Many people look at Dandora and they think that the county government would relocate Dandora to a new site, which of course will still bring more environmental and other safety issues to the different systems that cohabit or that neighbors in the area. That probably is why the Kenya Civil Aviation Authority have continued to object the plan to relocate to the new disposal site. As you rightly say, Dandora is full. Dandora became full in 2003. It is over 10 years with a generation of 2,400 tons of waste. And if we are to collect even 80% of that and take to Dandora, definitely will not get a space to dispose of waste. And that probably is why you find that the many agents of waste collection, that is the private sector, are not able to reach to the disposal site. So the sooner we resolve the issue of an alternative disposal site, the better for Nairobians. And I would urge the public that citing a final disposal site for a city of 4 million is the concern of everybody. It cannot just be the concern of Nairobi City County government
alone.
And therefore, I would urge other related stakeholders, the Kenya Civil Aviation Authority, the Kenya Ports Authority, the national government, Minister of Environment, the NEMA, to come on board and sit down with the county government to see to it that we resolve this issue. Because as you rightly say, everybody now is making noise about what is the situation of waste without necessarily understanding that it is a whole system. You have to generate waste, you have to collect it, transport it, probably treat it or separate it, and finally dispose it. Where once you get one element not right, then the whole system collapses. And therefore, it is urgent that the Nairobi City County relocates the current disposal site. And when it comes to relocation of the current disposal site, I'm saying that we are going to establish a sanitary landfill. That requires that before you dispose the waste, you really have to excavate the ground, do lining so that you do not interfere with underground aquifers or the water table in the neighborhood, and then construct drainage system in the event that there is going to be some runoffs from that waste material, then compact the waste and cover it with soil in such a way that there is not going to be any scavenging. So the fear that probably the Kenya Airports Authority had with the relocation of the disposal site to Ruai, where they are likely to be birds scavenging on waste,
On the
was
flight
not
path.
going, exactly, was not going to happen, because once you've covered the waste, you've compacted it, covered it with maybe some 1 meter or 500 millimeters of thickness of good soil, then there's not going to be any bird scavenging from it. So that is what I would urge the public, that yes, even if you bring any technology for waste treatment, waste management is not complete without a final disposal site. So Nairobi still has to get a final disposal site where the residues which cannot be recycled, the residues that have come as a result of some processes, say for example, if we are to get energy or if we are to get methane gas from biodegradable waste material, then there's still going to be some remnants that have to be finally disposed.
All right.
That is what is happening even in the developed countries.
Okay,
So
John,
we still
John,
need it.
as we wind up, what stops us from having a system whereby we have this waste disposal recycled and used, like now she's mentioned, we can have methane gas, we have countries where they literally have dump sites which are recycling centers, which can now again be used by the residents for one reason or the other, which becomes also a form of income. What stops us from doing that?
That's a very interesting question. I'll say, first of all, it's a multi-sectoral issue. It's beyond my sister here. It's beyond the county of Nairobi. It's beyond, the counties. I think it starts from the person generating the waste in terms of what attitude do you have. Look at Nakuru Road. Look at Mombasa Road. How somebody drinks yogurt, then drops a paper outside. It starts with you. You think your car is so clean, you want to dump outside. That attitude has to change from there. It generates into what attitude do you have for the environment. It has to be created from the cottage level.
What do we need to do to change that attitude? Could it
We
be
need to
maybe
do-
stringent laws
yes.
that will make sure people don't
We
dump?
need to take a Michuki line. I think when Michuki came up, the late Honorable Michuki came up with the issue of safety belts. There were no safety belts in matatus. Right now there are safety belts in matatus. I think we need to do a radical change, because most of the time Kenyans, until there is a fear, they might not do what they're supposed to do. And then take the approach of capacity development, that people have capacity to do that. Then also take the incentive approach, whereby there is incentive, there is incentives to recycle, and to know that there is an opportunity there. Kenyans generate at least half a kilo of waste every day. In Nairobi, the recycling of plastic bags is only 1%. So we are saying the recycled plastic paper that is remaining is 99%. We need to do something about it.
Okay.
And to do it immediately.
And to do it immediately. Maybe as we
Maybe
wind up,
just
what needs to be done from the county government? We can't resign and say that nothing
No.
can be done, and it's not left to the county government or to
Yes.
the entrepreneur. Something has to start.
No, we are not resigning, and we'll never resign until we get the waste management system for Nairobi particularly right, because Nairobi is really the gateway of everybody who comes to Kenya, and therefore sorting out the waste management system is key to the government in power at the moment. I think what we need to fast track very urgently is the enforcement of the laws that we already have. You heard that already the county have got the solid waste management law that is coming into effect beginning of April. It was somehow delayed a bit, but we can sort out those. By April, we need to have a stringent enforcement system that can deter some of the bad practices, as John had clearly said, that when you look at the attitude of people, when you look at the way we behave with waste, it is just not right. And the only way to correct that is to ensure that the laws that are there or regulations are implemented and effectively implemented. What I see is also secondary to this is to ensure that, yes, Kenyans are said to be about 85% literate, But how this is turned into their good practices is one thing, especially for environmental matters. We need to couple this with awareness creation. And in this respect, we would ask the media houses also just to come on board and assist us roll out some of the do's and the don'ts in waste management, so that the people can be, their conscience can be activated, so that they get to know what is right and what is wrong and where to do it. Because when you look at a lot of what we see in Nairobi, for example, is illegal dumping. If you go, Michael, like you go to Race Course Road, you collect waste at night, the following morning you find a whole heap of waste. So somebody is bringing that waste,
dumping illegally,
knowing
so something
that
needs to be done.
So
sorry, I'm going to have to cut you short because we are out of time, but thank you very much for joining us this morning. And that is Leah Oyake, who's the Chief Officer for Environment, Nairobi County. Thank you for coming. And also John Kioli, who's the Executive Director for Green Africa Foundation. Thank you for the work that you're doing to ensure that our environment remains sustainable. Remember, you also have a huge responsibility